So I got some of these $25 off-road lights from Amazon, and the reviews say they're actually halfway decent for the price, so I'm going to put these on the Xterra. And in order to do that, I picked up a piece of 3/16 flat bar from Tractor Supply to make a mounting bracket. Oh, it gets dark at like 5 o'clock here in Michigan now. So anyway, I wanted to have them about centered in the grill. You know, I think that's where they ought to go. Now there is a crash bar right here behind this plastic cover, so I figured that'd be a good spot to mount it to. So basically I'm going to use that flat stock bar and basically make something that kind of comes up 3 inches and then down, because it would look a little awkward if you just tried mounting these straight down here, you know. So we got to lift them up 3 inches to get them center. So the first thing I'm going to do is, when I get a piece of cardboard, I'm going to make a mock-up mount so we can make sure we hopefully get this the way we want it the first try, because Tractor Supply metal is fairly expensive. This is like 15 bucks right here just for this piece. So let me go find a long piece of cardboard and we'll start making some measurements and bends and get started. I don't think it'll be too difficult. Probably the hardest part's going to be drilling holes with dull drill bits. So this is kind of what I was thinking. So I'm going to add a little bit extra on the real one so I can make a flat spot right here with a hole, and that's what will bolt onto the actual bumper of the car. There's a little split between if I wanted to go just straight down right here, make a 90. So I think that would be a little easier to make it straight, but I think it going like this looks better. So that's what I'm gonna go for. So I got these 7-inch lights, and I tried to just keep all the numbers straight numbers. So I got exactly a foot across here, and then these are gonna bolt on right at the edge, and then 6 inches down on either side. So what I'd like to do now is make like a jig with this like 45-degree turn, or whatever this is. It might not be exactly 45, it might be more like a 30 or something. Doesn't really matter, but I want to make sure that it's the same on both sides. And hopefully when I get done, you know, this will be level across here and not, you know, on an angle, because that would be annoying. Can't have that. So I guess I'm going to try to make something up that I can, you know, basically copy this angle down, and when I'm bending the real piece, I can use that to make sure it's where it needs to be. Alright, so I took two little pieces of wood here and bolted them together. So that's what I'm going to use to make sure I got my angles right. So I guess now I need to put some measuring marks on the real piece of metal and start bending it. So I'm going to get my tape measure out and we'll start with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 1.5 inches. You know what, let's go for 2 inches on the ends. To bend for the mounting. So 2 inches. And then from that mark, we're going to want 6 inches for the part that goes down on an angle. Okay. Now from that part, we're going to want 12 inches. This is going to be where the lights are. Then we're going to want another 6. And then we're going to want another 2. Now that I got double checked, make sure everything's measured correctly, I'm going to cut this excess off. Alright, now that I have that done, I'm going to measure where my 4 holes need to be. I need 2 holes to mount the lights, 2 holes to mount it to the bumper, and I think it'd be easier to drill the holes when this is still flat. Okay. Now let's see, where does our mounting hole need to be? About 1 3/4 inch. 1 3/4 inch for the line will be here. Okay, now that I have all the marks where I need to drill my holes, I'm just going to go ahead and use this pointy screwdriver to try to punch a hole for the drill bit to start. Okay, now that I got the holes drilled, I need to start making the bends. So basically what I want to do is make sure things flat on the table, or straight with the table. Because if it's slightly crooked from this edge here, then your bend might be a little crooked. Ensure that that's right where I want it. Okay. That all looks reasonably straight. And my mark's right where it needs to be. So this I can use to try to test it. Make sure my angle's right. So this metal, pretty thick, is proving a little more difficult to bend than I thought. Now if you had a vise, that would probably make this a lot easier, but I don't have one, so what I'm doing is I'm heating it up right where I want it to bend, and then hitting it with a hammer. I'm gonna go take it over to the sink and cool this bend off. So, I got that bracket bent up. Is it straight? Of course not. It's crooked. So I might have to shim up this side a little bit, but I got it as close as I can. You know, and if I don't tell you it's crooked, you might not notice. But the placement of the lights is just about perfectly where I wanted them, so that's good. So the next thing I got to do is there's a crash bar behind this plastic, and I need to drill some holes, you know, so I can actually mount these to the bumper. Now I was a little concerned that I might have to, well, you know what I could do instead of cutting into the plastic here, I could actually notch the metal a little bit so it'll go in a little farther, because I'll tell you what, this piece of metal is strong enough, it's not going to have any issues if I take a little meat off of it. So I guess what I'm going to do next is I'm going to mark where it's hitting this plastic and maybe bring it in a little bit so it'll slide on a little further. It's because you can see how this is kind of hanging over right now. Now I can force it back a little bit, but I'd like to get this further inboard basically. So I'm going to make that little adjustment, and then I'll have to get it centered, get this thing centered, mark where I got to drill some holes, and then drill through there, and then the mount will basically be done. I'll just have to paint it black. Well, there they are all mounted on. I drilled the 2 holes through the bumper cover and then down into the actual crash bar that you can kind of see back in here. That crash bar comes out to about here. So you gotta, that's why I had to notch it out right here around that plastic so I could get these in further enough to actually catch into the metal. So right now I got just 1/4 inch bolts in. I drilled the holes to 5/16, but I don't have any long enough, so I'm gonna have to go to the store. But looks pretty good. Right about, you look at it, they're right about centered in the dash, or the grill I mean, that's where I wanted them. So next step, I'm going to go ahead and paint this bracket black, then obviously hook some wires up. So we'll get into that when I get some. And then you go pick up some wires and maybe a relay or something. We'll see how I want to go about it. Okay, before I take off to the store to get some wiring supplies to wire these lights in, I wanted to figure out how much actual juice these things would draw so I could get a fuse. You can do an Ohm's law equation, so I know these are supposed to be 55 watt lights, and obviously we're dealing with a 12 volt circuit. So to figure out the watts or the amps, you would just do 55 watts divided by 12 volts. So they should both be drawn about 4.6 amps a piece. But I was a little curious how much they actually draw. So I got my voltmeter up, and I know shouldn't blow my meter up because this is rated for 10 amps. And I have a suspicion that these are going to be less than advertised. So got my meter set up, and let's see if we can turn it on. And we got about 1.8 amps. We'll do, so we know we got 1.8 amps, and we got a 12 volt system, so we're going to times that number by 12. So these are actually 21.6 watt lights. 55 times 210. So both of them together will be 110 watts if they were as advertised, but it'll be more like 50. So we know we got 12 volts, we got 110 watts, so we need to know how many amps both of them will draw together. So 110 divided by 12 volts, so 9. So I think running a 10 amp fuse would be a little too close. Of course, I think they're actually only going to be drawing like 5 amps because we just tested how much they actually are. So I don't know, maybe a 15 amp fuse I think would be pretty decent. Okay, well, I got it all wired up. I got my bracket painted black. Everything's looking nice. And I just wanted to go over the wiring before. Ow. So watch till the end of this video, and I will show you how the lights perform at night. I'll do like a light test. So anyway, here's a switch. I use this blank. This will pop out, and you can go ahead and drill a hole, put whatever kind of switch you want in there. And I went with the complete easiest. Let me get this thing to stop beeping. I went with the easiest wiring. What do I want to say? I went with the easiest way to wire them up that I could come up with. So the lights are actually grounded underneath the dash here. If you see that body that computer there, that body control module, there's a bracket that basically bolts it to the firewall and holds that computer there. So you can see there is my ground wire connected right there to the firewall where that bracket hooks up. So I didn't have to drill any holes or anything, and that's a good ground. And then from there, that wire goes up to the switch, and then another wire goes from the switch out through the firewall. Get the hood popped here. Through the firewall. I actually went through this rubber grommet down here. Now you have to be careful doing that. You don't want to puncture a wire in that harness when you're trying to pop a hole for a wire you're running through. So I only got one wire going from the lights inside. So that's why it's simple, because I don't have to run a bunch of wires everywhere. So my one ground wire kind of follows along the fender apron here and then goes through here, and I cut a little too much, so I got the access here to the lights. And then the positive side, I got a fused link here, so goes just straight up from the positive side of the battery to the lights. So the ground is what's switching the lights on and off, and the ground is inside underneath the dash. So that's the easiest way I could do it. I didn't run a relay or anything. I got a nice thick, I think it's a 12 gauge ground wire and equally thick power wires. So yeah, that's pretty much the simplest way to go about it, I think. So like I said, stay tuned until the end. I'll do a nighttime test with these lights out in the back roads. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. So here we are out in the back roads. Figured I'd do a light test, see what the difference is. So this is low beam, that's high beam, and then that's high beam with the off-road lights on. Low beam, off-road lights off. Do a test just with the off-road lights. Headlights back on, high beams on. So I don't know, it helps a little bit.